Uh, Welcome, everybody, to Founders Live Conversations. My name is Luis Santazana. I'll be your host today. With me is Weston Baker from Morphic. They're a Backstage Marketplace partner, and they've been with us for a while. And I am just psyched for today's conversation about tips and tricks for creating a top-performing website. So, yes, they're a marketplace partner, and yes, Morphic can help you with your website needs or other marketing needs, as we'll discover. But this is a general conversation. Like the title is going to be accurate. This is about getting a website to where you need it to be for your startup. And whether you use Morphic, Morphic can supply all kinds of, they can be a great tool for any founder. But Weston's going to talk about just things in general and things that can help you. There's no obligation to go to Morphic, but we certainly encourage you to do so if you find the value in that. I'm going to let Weston introduce himself, but I'm going to read a little bit about Morphic just to kick us off here. Morphic helps anyone create professional websites affordably and quickly with no design or development experience required. The no-code SaaS platform utilizes proven creative agency strategies and processes to design and build top-quality websites and marketing materials. Receive custom designs with unique brand expression, tailored copywriting, and company-specific guidance within seconds of onboarding. Easily make updates using Morphic's award-winning site editor, best ease of use from G2 and Capterra. Benefit from business-grade tools and website upgrades over time that keep your site and materials forever on brand and at peak performance. So we have some interesting offers for you in our Backstage Marketplace, by the way. I'll share the link for that in the chat. And if you're interested in exploring Morphic, that's a great way to discover them and get linked right in. There's a couple things that Weston's offering that we can go over later. Weston, let's check those slides and
Cool.
and get things moving. I'm really psyched to hear what all you got to say. I like your website. I like your approach to things. I think your design sensibility is awesome. So eager to hear your thing.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks for everyone for joining, and for anyone who was scheduled to come last week. I ended up getting sick. I have 3 little girls, and they always come home with runny noses. So thanks for rescheduling. So I'm going to share the screen. We have a little presentation just to kind of walk through some hopefully useful tips and tricks for everybody. And this is just meant to be helpful. Hopefully, worst case, you come away with a few kind of memorable pointers to keep in mind as you're, building your companies, your brand, your website, and that kind of stuff. And hopefully a lot more. So I'll share the screen here. And let me know if you can see this.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll just dive in. And Luis, thanks for the intro. So just to go over that again quickly. So my background too, just so everyone knows, I studied architecture, went into the field designing skyscrapers for a big firm for a few years. I like designing everything though, so I switched to the creative agency world in New York, became a creative director at a couple of shops, and then started my own firm. And that was about 10 years ago. We've done a lot of work for startups and some VCs, a lot of branding, marketing materials, website design, product design. We also kind of built a startup studio within the agency that would partner with startups to help them with, different things that they needed throughout the life cycle of a startup. And so we'd help, design their onboarding flow and their UX UI. And then when they needed a rebrand, we could help with that. And all these different kind of creative design things that come up. So that's kind of the backstory. And with Morphic, it was actually born out of the agency organically, where we started to notice ways that we could kind of productize and automate the creative agency design solutions that, from our perspective, you're only able to get those if you're hiring a top designer agency. And so we wanted to try to productize that and then bring it to the masses so that it's accessible. And this is where Founders Live we first connected, was kind of that common mission of supporting small companies, grow and become successful. And that was kind of one thing that we noticed with agencies is only the bigger companies can really afford it. So that's kind of the backstory there. So yeah, I'll just dive in here. And then if anyone has questions, feel free to, jump in or whatever. I'll just kind of try to bust through this and give you guys some tips and stuff. So yeah, this is mainly for, helping you figure out how to, get from where you are with your brand and your website, or if you don't have any at all, and some of the things you should think about if you want to really have a high performing and impactful, digital presence and brand and everything. And so I kind of like to start this with why it matters. I think a lot of companies, and people think that brand and creative stuff is mostly important with B2C. And what we've been finding is that it's branding and creative and design stuff is actually incredibly important for B2B, if not more important than B2C, because of a number of factors. But a lot of the studies are showing it's actually just a person who's a buyer at the end of the day, and whether they're buying a shoe or they're buying a software, they're influenced by the same factors, and a lot of those things have to do with trust and understanding quality and those different factors. So if you care about your brand and you build a good way to kind of communicate and build a good first impression, it actually goes a long way to having a successful business. And in B2B, especially if you don't have a physical product to look at and analyze, a lot of people look to the brand and to the people to assess if it's a good company. So that's kind of just some, background on importance of design stuff. And then here are kind of the main categories that we'll click through. So the brand first, structure of your website and kind of the content there, how to apply your brand into a visual design for your site, thinking about the website build itself, then marketing materials as kind of an extension of your website, and then some key takeaways. So brand, I think just big things to remember here is branding from an external standpoint, it builds trust and awareness, differentiation, but it's also important internally. So as you build a company and you want to build culture, a brand helps kind of build that identity and clarity of mission for people. So it's not just an outward thing. So these are primarily B2C companies. And I wanted to show this just because they're some of the most recognizable brands in the world. And while Morphic mostly works with B2B companies, we kind of look to these to take cues from. And what they're basically doing is they're creating a set of really memorable brand elements to communicate what they offer. And they do it in very different ways. So Nike on the left, they celebrate great athletics, and they typically show athletes being successful at whatever they're doing. They don't dive in and start talking about their product. So they really build a brand, and they don't talk about like product specs. Louis Vuitton with the super recognizable brand print there. Basically anyone who sees, a product with that print on it, they kind of have an immediate assumption that there's a high quality level to that product simply because of that brand print. Louboutin is similar kind of with that red sole. It's like a very recognizable kind of IP driven, signal to a consumer, and very memorable. And then, the Geico Gecko is something totally different than these other ones, but it is something that's brought out to make the brand memorable and communicate. So these are all very different, but just to kind of go over some, big memorable brands and how they do things. And the reason I bring up this slide, which for one, it's to make things memorable. So I don't think you're going to forget this after we look at it. But even with sound, you'll hear these really memorable moments. So Beethoven's Fifth Symphony with the bum, 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 bum. There's basically like a simplified, really powerful, memorable moment that is created at the very beginning of the song. And you remember what the rest of the song is from that point on. But in design, that's kind of a minimal design technique where you're taking the essence of the whole song and you're simplifying it into something really memorable. The Jaws theme, we probably don't even need to hum. Everyone probably recognizes it. It holds some meaning. And then even lots of other songs that are, essentially designed really well will have that recognizable signature. So even with Britney Spears, like the bum, 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 a lot of people can hear the rest of the song play, and it might be stuck in your head for the next 2 hours because it does such a good job of capturing that song and the essence of it. And that's kind of why I wanted to show these things, because your goal with your brand is to kind of capture the essence and then find those big unique moments that you can celebrate, and that's what will make your brand unique. So here's what most companies start with: a logo, some colors, fonts, but even if you only have an idea, that's fine. You can still utilize a lot of these tips to build out your brand and then your website. So I think one thing that you should think about doing is building a brand toolkit. And these are kind of the main components that go into that. This can translate into a style guide. But what's important here is basically step one is to identify what makes you unique. And it could be any number of things. So it could be your offering or a specific audience, your value proposition, a specific differentiator like your team's experience or your focus. And in some cases, with a lot of companies who don't have clear differentiators, their visual style can actually become one. So there's another kind of trick there. And just kind of as a step two to this, once you've identified those elements, then you can try to celebrate them by building them into brand identity elements. So if you go through this process and you take these points and you kind of fill them out very quickly, you can basically try to define those brand identity elements. And when I tell people about this process, usually, try using simple words to fill in each item, simple statements. Don't try to do it perfectly. Don't get stuck on it. Just dive in and go for it. And you'll be surprised how much of a kind of unique brand that you can define just with words by going through this exercise in a couple of minutes. And if you really need help with it, you can always use a tool like ChatGPT to type in, like, here are my unique brand elements or my identifying elements, and how can I convert those into keywords for font and color and patterns and things like that. And once you have these things, you can also utilize other tools, AI tools and things like that, to generate, if you don't have a logo or you need a recommendation for a font or you want to create a pattern that's unique, you can use those kinds of tools to do that. And I'll give you some of those. So if anyone wants to do that, they can check out those tools. But basically, this is kind of like the basics of your kind of brand toolkit that you could start to utilize. And then just, this is kind of jumping ahead, but wanted to share some results of, like, if you go through this process and define some of those things, what some kind of final outcomes can look like here. So I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, but just to kind of show you where it leads. So here's some of those tools I mentioned, and I can send this deck over if anyone is interested or wants some links or something. So some tools you can use if you don't have a logo, I put up there. If you want to help generating color palettes or the graphics and images, and there's like more tools that come out every single day for this. And there's specific ways for how you can use them, but I would definitely take advantage of them if you're needing to create stuff. Definitely go Google it or like look to some of these resources before, spending a bunch of money or time trying to do it in kind of the way that we would have 5 years ago, I would say. So jumping into site structure, basically here, your website is the most important marketing tool, most likely for most businesses it is. So making sure you structure it correctly is pretty important. So typically we would recommend organizing everything that you have into 4 to 7 buckets or so. And I would think about that as the biggest, most important elements of your business that you want to communicate. So you could kind of write it out in simple statements and then try to summarize those into a single word, and those basically become your website pages. So we're just giving an example here of how that works. And then once you have those pages, you can try to tell a concise story across each one of those. And this is kind of the basic process that we've found to be most successful for companies of any size, really. But yeah, telling that concise story for each one of those buckets will definitely help someone who's coming to learn about your company. Building wireframes for each page. This is where it gets a bit more kind of design heavy, and you can always try to do this yourself, but there are a lot of these tools that will help you now to plug in information and then get an output of wireframes that actually address the things that you're plugging in, your specific company info and everything. And basically here, each one of the sections is translated from that little diagram to a section with content. So here's some tools that you can use to kind of map those things out for site mapping, and then also for wireframing. Visual design, this is basically how you apply the brand that you have been building and all those different visual elements, the colors, fonts, patterns, and everything with that site structure to become a very custom on brand website design. And there's definitely some strategy that goes into this, but these are kind of the big things that I would think about as you're going through this process. So use big, strong moves. We'll go into each one of these too, just to show some examples. Utilize your logo geometry if it's unique. Use graphics to complement the biggest moments. Use color strategically, be consistent, write copy that wins, and be selective with how you use these things. So big, strong moves. You could basically choreograph someone's eye by doing this. So choose which elements you want to draw attention to and make those visually the biggest. So it doesn't have to be a graphic or an image. That could also just be text, like a huge statement. And you can think about it, in terms of that hierarchy, like what's the first, second, and third thing that you want someone to look at. So likely it's probably a big message, a big graphic, and then a call to action. Utilize your logo geometry if it's unique. So a lot of companies, this is kind of like an easy way to build out a unique kind of brand package, is to take a logo and find the elements of it that are recognizable and unique, and then kind of celebrate that in different ways. So you could use it to crop photos, create background patterns. You could even use some of the qualities of the shapes and icons, and you can use those different tools to create these things for you, so you don't have to kind of be the designer and go in and do all of it yourself. But you can see how it builds some consistency also, and always references back to the brand logo. Use graphics to complement biggest moments. So this one, again, it's kind of about choreographing the eye and highlighting things. So, if you want people to focus on the companies that you work with, you can really highlight that using a bright brand color. And secondarily here, there's another graphic in the background of the kind of landing section. So there's kind of multiple graphic elements going on that can complement each other, but they do also kind of have a strategy for what they're helping you focus on. So you can basically use them to emphasize what are the most important elements. Color strategically, mentioned that a little on the last slide because some of these things overlap a little bit, but you can use color to highlight, call to actions specifically is a big one that we like to do. So if you have a bright brand color like a red or orange or green or something like that, instead of plastering that over the entire site design, which might become overwhelming or not really align with what your brand identity kind of is. You can still use it to really highlight certain things, even with little things like the icons on your site. Call to action sections also is a really good place to, you can see on the bottom right, that bright blue to really highlight, which, as you scroll down a page, people are most likely to kind of see that bright thing and stop there to see what that says, even though they may have scrolled right past a bunch of the kind of the white sections. So it definitely works to use those bright colors. Be consistent. I think this one is relatively obvious, but it's kind of hard to be consistent even if you want to be. So it's kind of important to utilize those same graphics across different materials. Try to use the same types of patterns, or if you have one primary graphic style for your landing page, try to use that style when you're introducing the company on your one pager. That will really help with someone who's coming and seeing a material for the first or second or third time, because if they see a material and it has that same kind of combination of styles, they'll remember exactly which brand this is, versus something that's more kind of plain, or if it's just white paper with text on it, there's nothing there that's hinting at what company it's coming from. So that branding consistency can help build trust a lot. Copy that win. So I think a few big pointers here. Simple is usually best. So as simple as you can say something is better than writing really big descriptions. People don't want to spend a lot of time, no matter what site they're on, or if they're already very interested in your company, they're not going to want to sit there reading paragraphs. Most people leave a website within 3 seconds if they haven't found what they're looking for. So you really have to kind of ease them in, use big statements first. And then if they commit to reading more, then you can provide more information below that or on a deeper page. But if you lead with the large, statement, they're probably not going to read it. Another big point here is your customer's story or your audience's story is more important than yours. So if you lead in, this is kind of going back to the Nike thing where they don't talk about product specs. They talk about essentially their customer story, like be like Mike. You can go be a great athlete and if you use our products, but it's not leading with the product first. And so for businesses, it's kind of B2B. It's also kind of the same. So you should lead with how your customer's journey and how they can reach success, and you're kind of a partner in their story doing that, versus talking all about yourself. So you can think about it from their perspective. If they come to a site and it's all talking about some other company, they might not be as interested as if the language is talking to how them being there on that site is going to help them. So you can do that and then tie in how you add value to their journey. So less is more. This is often hard to do. But if you can strip away everything that isn't 100% necessary, usually you'll communicate faster, and you can remove a lot of clutter visually. And usually this helps build confidence, and it can just have kind of a higher quality to it too. Website build. So I think a couple important things here: know your skills and limitations. Try to list out like the 3 to 5 biggest needs that you have for your website over time, and then make sure to kind of look at each platform or solution and try to choose the one that addresses all those things. I think a lot of people dive into this kind of too quickly, and find out later that they made a decision that isn't the best for the kind of the long term of their site or how it's managed and things like that. So I think one thing a lot of people don't think about so much is that there's a lot of template builders and design software, but for people who are not designers, those platforms don't really offer creative solutions. It gives you a bunch of tools, but typically they don't create for you. You have to use them to create what you're thinking of. So that can be a roadblock for some people. Be aware of the changing landscape. So with websites specifically, there's a lot going on and there's a lot constantly changing. So just with whatever your business is, keep in mind kind of the digital presence and what is changing with those things. So for example, Google changes their search algorithm 500 times a year or more. And if your website is built in a way where it's not adjusting to those things, it can just decline over time. And most websites do. They require an engineer to come in and update them. So try to, choose platforms that will update for you so you don't have to invest in that going forward. Same thing with like screen sizes. There are new browsers every day, new ADA compliance rules. And so it's just things to keep in mind that probably most people don't think about when they're building their site. But it's good to kind of be aware of what's changing. Creating marketing materials. So this is one thing I've noticed where people who are redoing their website or building it for the first time, they often realize at some point, whether it's during the design process or build of their website or after, that they need materials that match it. And typically the website kind of drives that design style and they're as their core marketing material. So that's another thing. It's less website related, but more about just planning ahead for marketing materials and how you're going to create them, how you're going to extend your brand across these different designed collateral assets, and just planning out how you're going to get them created. Are you going to do it? And try to utilize your brand as much as possible when you do those things to maintain consistency. So yeah, key takeaways: defining your brand, those big, super memorable moments, celebrating them as much as possible, really extracting what's unique for your company and running with that, establishing site structure just to keep everything organized, bucket into content, kind of collections that can tell concise stories, apply visual design, the way that you can take that brand and apply it to your site with those different strategies, and then building for the future, just thinking about like how the world of websites and digital stuff is constantly changing, and just being set up in a way where you don't get kind of stuck at some point and have to rebuild your site or something like that. Yeah, and the key kind of big takeaway on our side is Morphic basically automates all those kind of tips and tricks. And, we've built a lot of these different features into the platform so that you can plug in the info and it will make design decisions and explain them and enable you to go change things. So this is kind of a lot of the stuff that has gone into the product. But you can, without using Morphic, you can still try to kind of follow those different strategies and tips and tricks and, update your current site using any of those design recommendations or how you think about the brand. So hopefully some of this stuff is useful, or you can kind of utilize as you're, going through updating your brand or kind of doing that next iteration of your website. And then obviously if anyone's interested in Morphic, I'd be happy to kind of, jump on a call and chat through how we could help or how the platform works and stuff. But that's kind of the little tie in there. So yeah, that's kind of the overall presentation. If anyone has any questions, definitely let me know. Happy to answer.
Well, that's awesome, Weston. Hey, everybody who is in attendance, definitely feel free to ask questions. Let's put your questions in the chat. But if you want, and I'll get to those in order for whichever ones are in there. And if you want to ask, come on screen and ask and be conversational about it, that is up to you. I'd love to have you on up here, but otherwise I can just ask the question for you. And usually takes a little while to get some questions going. So I can kind of start with one with a few to keep this moving. Weston, so I actually come from a creative agency background myself. That's where I've spent my whole career. So
Cool.
as soon as I saw your site and saw your approach, I'm like, okay, you actually get it you're speaking my language,
Mm-hmm.
and so that gives me real confidence in what you're doing, because you've done a really good job with this thing, and the presentation was awesome. So I actually really enjoyed it, and it's always good to hear those things again as many times as you've heard them, because you just start thinking about your own website, and obviously and like what you should change, or gosh, I got to review that thing, let's trim down some of the language, let's do all those things. If you had to pick something from all the stuff that you were talking about, like what are maybe like the biggest thing that biggest couple of points you might want somebody to take, you like your key
Yeah.
takeaways here with these four, I mean, in the top
Mm-hmm.
here, but like just the one thing that you might say, like, look, before you go, just
Yeah.
this one thing,
I
aside
think,
from consider Morphic.
yeah, no, no. I think finding what's unique about your company and how it's different than competitors and how it's going to help whoever your audience or customer is by far the most important thing, not just with brand, but for your business probably. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can communicate that's one of the tricky things that I think founders struggle with. Sometimes your company so well that
Right.
and you've internalized so much that it's hard to think outside of that and then recognize that it is or isn't coming across clearly on your materials or your site. So if you can kind of like attempt to step out of your own body and try to look at your business as if you're someone who has never heard of this company before, you have no idea what they do. Now go in and assess your site and your message and your brand and everything, and say, like, does this actually align with what they're saying? And you're thinking of it from the outsider's perspective. So then you can come kind of back into yourself and realize, and we do this too all the time, like, oh, we are not communicating that, this is something important. We're assuming they already know that, but
Yeah.
can't really make that assumption. You kind of have to look at it from the outsider's perspective and recognize those things. I think it's really hard to do also. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing, because having a great idea and then communicating it are two totally different things.
Awesome. Yeah, that is a really good takeaway. That's really cool. Hey, we have a question from Melissa here in the chat. Melissa, do you want to come on screen, or should I just read it? I guess that's something we should put in advance in the chat, whether you want to come on or not. But you know what? There you go. Awesome.
Oh yeah, I can ask it.
Hey,
Yeah,
Weston, I'm clearing the presentation.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was interested. Do you have any recommendations of maybe, so after your website is done, is there a good way to get just UX testing feedback as maybe a smaller sample? I know companies do that a lot, but maybe on a smaller scale. So just to make sure that your copy and your graphics and the whole thing looks good to other people, because I know if I'm doing it myself, I kind of get trapped in my mind. So it's good to get that external feedback.
Yeah, and then is your website kind of the company profile marketing site, or is it actually like a web app product login user interface?
Right now, I just have a 5-page website. I created it through this new website startup company, and so it's really basic. So I don't have the company colors or anything. It's just really just made for just who I am, my portfolio, and how they can contact me, basically. And I have a blog. But if I,
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I don't have any specific products or company names for that. I've definitely run across some in the past though, so I can try to gather those. I have them in my notes somewhere, so I could shoot them over after. I think also one thing that's pretty easy to do is just gather a few people who who know what you're doing and a few people who don't know what you're doing, and then ask them if if they go to your site to give some notes on what they learned and if it made sense to them and everything. So that's kind of a focus group approach. But yeah, I'll try to grab some of those like UX kind of testing tools. There are some that there's even new ones that are doing like heat maps for where it depends on what you want to, how you want to, the info you want to get, the feedback you want to get from people reviewing the site. But there are some that are using AI for kind of like doing heat maps of your site and where people are actually looking and clicking on and spending time on. And then you can get feedback on how to adjust. That's a very like high performing marketing kind of approach. A lot of our customers don't need that because they are showing more of like a company profile versus like an e-commerce site and something where if they lose someone's attention, they're going to lose dollars immediately. So yeah, I'll try to grab some of those, but I think even just like the basic like focus group is helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right, next we have, and this is a great idea, our Athena raised her hand using the reactions button, and so now I have a queue of people. So our Athena, you can go next with your question.
Hi, my name is Wilhelm. I just logged into my girlfriend's account, so that's why
Got it.
I'm not a girl standing or sitting here. So I have a question, Weston. So I've been in the web agency back and forth for 10 years here in Sweden. Mm-hmm. And I am very curious, like based on your company and your point of view in terms of 2024, because the things that you are talking about, there's like a lot of steps, right, to be in the end of the day credible for the customer on the website. Mm-hmm. And Shopify, for instance, is something that I've gone to from WordPress out of a optimizing standpoint and checkout standpoint. But the more we clarify in terms of our target groups, the more we need to think of, Replo, ClickFunnels, different kind of like template builders, mm-hmm, in addition to our website. So my question to you is, the company you're representing is, if you can like place yourself in the brackets, or is it more like Shopify, or is it more like Replo, like more of a template builder that is more easier to use? Because mm-hmm, that is something that's a compliment that I need to use nowadays, because I'm looking for the more easier version of the website to gain and to convert buyers.
Yeah, so Morphic is right now primarily built for non-e-commerce. Shopify is a great tool. That's what I typically recommend, and the agency that I run will use Shopify to build e-commerce sites also. So to clarify with Morphic, it's primarily for professional services companies like venture capital groups, startups, tech companies, AI companies, law firms, real estate firms. So it's basically a lot of the companies who just they need a professional digital presence. It needs to be easy for them to update over time. It should, a lot of times it's companies that have a hard time differentiating. So if it's a crowded industry and they know that they need something high quality and a little bit more custom, but they don't necessarily have the budget to hire an agency to do like a $40,000 website, that would be a good fit for Morphic, where they can go through, there's an onboarding flow where they plug in a bunch of information, their logo, their differentiators, like a lot of the things that we just kind of looked through. And then Morphic's algorithms essentially analyze, and it builds a company profile for them, analyzes it, and then it uses these design practices to create a custom site for them. So it's using these different parts and pieces that go into a website. I don't usually call them templates because it's not pulling from a list of like 100 templates and giving you one of them. It's actually designing and building every single section uniquely across the entire site in all pages. So in a similar way to how like an agency would go about that process. So for Morphic customers, they're non-designers primarily, so maybe it's a company of like 10 and they don't have a designer. They want that professional site. They have the info about who they are, and they can utilize the platform then. And it also addresses those things that change over time. So when we push upgrades on our end and a user saves their site, it inherits like the new SEO guidance and stuff like that. And it's really easy for non-designers to use. I think that's a big difference. We've noticed that other platforms that are kind of template-based don't provide recommendations or solutions that are specific to the customer. They provide tools that are kind of relatively easy to use to go in and do something, but our users basically come and tell us that they didn't realize no code wasn't really DIY if they're not a designer, and that what they were missing with those products is there was no designer translating their information into a design that's actually going to be good for their business. And that's basically what we're building into Morphic, is that it's software that can translate information into recommended design.
Good. So I just want to wrap up also, like, thank you for a great presentation. And I think that's something I want to highlight to everyone listening, because I've worked with business to business sales for like 14 years approximately. And all of the things that you're mentioning are so spot on when it comes to business. And me, taking a new product to the market towards business to consumer, that's another ballpark. It feels like people are not even, caring so much about the things that you're mentioning, because we have done that, we have gone that road, right? But it feels that it's more about relevance rather than design. And for that reason, I'd really want to highlight, like, if you have a product or something that you're selling to the consumer, don't waste all of your money on branding and stuff, because in the end of the day, you just want to read something. And if you can be relevant and have a great big call to action button and a great picture, that's enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of it.
It's kind of sad, but it feels like it's very true.
A lot of it also isn't rocket science. But for each company that's unique, you don't want a template. Like if you were going to custom design a car to work exactly for you and your needs, you wouldn't go pick one off the lot. You would actually, specify, like, here's how big my garage is, and here's my body size, and here's, all the different parts and pieces of it. But with template builders today, you're basically just kind of picking a car off the lot, which is designed for an average person. But the problem with that is that your car doesn't need to represent your business and help you kind of drive that forward and communicate. But that's kind of how we're treating these like website templates. So you're forced to kind of push them in different directions. And to come up with the custom design, it shouldn't really require the expensive agency going through this process like they're reinventing the wheel, because there are these kind of proven strategies that can be implemented, and you just need to know which ones to use when and for which companies to get that kind of custom output. So I think that's kind of what Morphic helps to do.
Awesome. That was a great exchange. I love the question. I love the follow-up question or statement. So awesome to have that. Hey, we have Jessica next. Jessica, do you want to come on screen? Or I actually don't have a text question to answer, to ask. So Jessica,
yes, of course.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Hello. Hi, Weston.
Hi.
So funny, I joined this kind of on a whim. I'm in Seattle area. I'm friends with Nick, and so I get all the notifications and everything. And so I'll give you a little bit of insights into what I'm doing, and then we'll go from there. So I worked with small businesses for years. I worked at Microsoft for 13 years, and then I started a company working with small businesses. We had about 1,000 small businesses come through, and it was basically like, how do we get these companies off the ground? How do we get them from no clients, no business, no sales to actually getting somewhere? And I tried all different tools out there and landed with Unbounce just because you could do like really rapid iteration. It's easy for them to get in and design. The designs are not going to look good. Most often they're not going to look good. But that was just the tool that we ended up using. Our partnership with Unbounces, we've had a legacy partnership with them. It's been a very sweet deal. They've now said next year we want to change our deal with you. And so we have about 1,000 clients right now where we're trying to figure out what are we going to do with them. So anyway, so that might be an interesting conversation with us to just try to figure out, is there something in here that you guys do that, I mean, that's a lot of A/B testing. So I don't think you guys do that, but a lot of these clients have other design needs. So, so that's all happening at the same time. That business is going, but I created a new agency to work with midsize and enterprise.
Nice.
So there's new design challenges for that, right? And so I'm in the process of building out my service providers and like, how am I going to approach design for these clients? And so it's so funny because I'm like Webflow. So this weekend I'm like, I'm going to learn Webflow. Yeah. And I get in there and I'm like, I could do that, or that's a pretty big learning curve.
Yeah. I mean, those platforms are awesome too. Like for specific users, they're really good. Like Webflow, if you're a designer, Webflow is amazing. I think what we've realized though is our customers are not designers. So when they go in there and they hear Webflow is awesome, then they're like, I don't know what to do with this. So yeah, learning design software, learning how to design, like you shouldn't have to do that if you just want to like start a company. So yeah, I would love to.
It's like, sure, you can do all the dials and everything, but to actually make it look good, I think.
Like, and getting it right too, like having it look really nice. I think this is another area that people kind of get mixed up on a little bit with design stuff. I think of design as creative problem solving, but I think a lot of people think of design as making something look good. And it's obviously, if you design something well, it should look good as a result. That's kind of what form follows function means. So focusing on the function of it, then obviously like you'll have a good output that represents how it functions. So anyway, those tools are awesome. I think it sounds like we could be a really good partner for that first one that you mentioned. We actually are working on some A/B testing integrations that should streamline that, which is pretty cool. With like some partners, I could tell you more about like what we're doing there.
That'd be great.
And then on the mid-size to enterprise business front, interestingly, like we've built Morphic to work for like a solopreneur who doesn't have a big budget and they don't even know if their company is going to be around in 6 months. So like this model can work for them and keep burn rate low and stuff. But we have firms that manage billions of dollars on the platform who selected it over and had $100,000, $200,000 budget for the website and chose Morphic over the creative agencies. So it still works as like a super high quality platform for like those businesses that are a little bit bigger.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. I just signed up for the for me to go in and check it out because I have a lot of the brand elements, and so I was going to see if I could throw something together up there. But,
cool. Yeah, we have a lot of cool new stuff rolling out soon too. So I can, if you want to hop on a call or something,
I'd love to.
I can show you some of that too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jessica. That's a great connection. I like to see the dots, the everything light up on that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Weston. So, one thing that I have noticed from the start with early stage founders, from as soon as I started looking at this space and when they get started is they have a lot of focus on product, and because that's the first thing they understand. They have something they're trying to solve. And often marketing dollars or content dollars or brand dollars are like not one of their first considerations. And a website certainly is something that they know they're going to need. But what would you say is good timing for them to Like when should they engage with you to get this website going? Is it like a start early so that you can work on it as things are developed, or like wait until you have the product ready to go, or what would you say?
That's a good question. I think sooner is better. So even if you just have an idea and you're going to start telling people about it, if you're kind of serious about it, you think this is actually going to turn into something, I would put up like a basic landing page. And like, if you're on Morphic, you can just go on the lowest tier, which is like the $50 a month tier, and get something up there. And if you want to cancel it in a few months, then that's fine. And we're talking to another Seattle-based like tech behemoth about this kind of solution where people want to test idea. And this comes back to the A/B testing thing too. It's part of the reason we're looking into this. People want to test out their business ideas. And one of the best ways to do that is to build a website and try to drive people to it and test the market to see if it's like a viable concept. And if it's not, then you just cancel. You don't have to continue with it. You didn't spend $20K on like your first agency created website or something. So you can actually get that same level of quality now with Morphic, and we're building some tools to make that even easier and at like a pretty large scale for some partners. So I think starting earlier, if you think that anyone's going to go Google it and look you up, then you should probably have something there. And that's kind of like probably the, thing to think about the most. The other thing that we're doing with the platform, though, it's really easy to scale up. So if you don't have to kind of build your starter site and then, 6 months down the line, you get funding or you decide this is like, I'm going to leave my job and do this. You don't have to like scrap that initial site and start from scratch again. You can actually upgrade on the platform. So you don't have to rebuild stuff, and it's built in a high quality way in the first time. We have this smart profile thing that I think I mentioned where all your business info is in there, and Morphic references it when it does new designs for you. So if you create a new page, it's going to reference your industry and those goals and differentiators and your value proposition and all that kind of stuff. So it'll write the copy for you, and it'll design based on that as if it's like a designer who has that info. So you can go in and change that profile down the line. So even if you like pivot and you change from focusing on, one core customer to another, you can go change your profile and save it. And Morphic will basically recalibrate so it is designing based on that new profile. So, and even for like brand, if you do a rebrand down the line, we've built the tools for brand styles at a global level so that, if you change your core colors and fonts and your brand personality keywords, you can essentially just click save and ask it to redesign stuff, and it will redesign the entire site and marketing materials, which we've been adding to the platform. So we're solving for a lot of the things that we've seen in the agency world with relatively high paying customers who have these problems come up, but they're the same problems that small businesses have. So that's kind of where there's a big opportunity on our side, is to bring this like very high quality solution to these smaller businesses also.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that, because there is a lot to this platform that I didn't realize you had. And it's interesting when you position the terms of these various pain points or various opportunities and how you unlock that. So thank you for sharing that. Wow. I also, so we're getting ready to close up. If anybody's got any other final questions, please just pop in at this point and ask. We're conversational here. You can just show up on screen. The last thing that I might ask you is, two things, really quick questions. One, so when you have a site designed by Morphic, it's not like you're designing something and like, okay, here's the code, now put it on, figure out your hosting and all that. You do hosting and okay.
Yeah, we have an enterprise hosting agreement with like one of the leading hosting companies. So every website that's on the platform actually has the same service level agreement for an enterprise hosted website, which like the only projects in the agency world that I did those, very high quality like enterprise hosting agreements with was like for Dwayne Johnson's business that we were a digital partner with, and like Nickelodeon and like the really big ones. So most startup founders don't really need that, but that's just like the level of business grade features and integrations and stuff that we're trying to build into this. So it really is like you never need to move off of it. And then the other thing that that kind of comes up there is, so we've been building all this automation into the platform to hopefully, solve all these different, pain points and stuff. And the other side to it is we have an internal creative team that can help with things. So if someone goes through the, onboarding and it sets up their site, and then they realize like they want something super customized to add to it, we can provide the tools to help do that, but our team can also jump in, and most of the subscription packages have hours of services and support. So like we'll have a venture capital group sign up and then say, hey, can you update our one-pager design to like match the new site design? And we don't have one-pagers in the platform yet, but that's actually coming down the pipeline. So our team can go in and do that, send it over, and we don't have to like bill for a separate project and stuff.
Awesome. That's super helpful. Looking forward to that. My last question before we wrap up, any other questions that somebody pop in? Bye, Jessica. The last question is around price. So back in the day, a website used to cost a lot. Developers would charge all kinds of money, and a lot of people still have this sense memory or expect, hey, websites can be complicated. This should cost a lot of money to do.
Yeah.
And or it's like really cheap, but it'll look really cheap. I think you have a different outlook on this, and you're much more accessible with a much different result. How do you describe what expectations should be around an early stage site?
Yeah, so we have kind of 3 different core tiers: a launch, pro, and business tier. Launch is $50 a month if you pay for the full year up front, $65 if you pay monthly. That's the one that's probably best for like a founder who has an idea and they kind of want to put something together that looks professional, start to put out feelers and stuff. The pro tier is pretty good for like a company that's starting to grow and has a little bit of traction and stuff. And those come with more user seats and more integrations, more total page count, like those different elements of just kind of a larger, more robust site. And then business is just significantly higher. We're adding a lot of really cool AI kind of driven tools that are fully integrated into the platform, and likely those will be kind of separated out by tier a little bit too. But the pro tier is $250 a month if you pay monthly, and then $200 if you pay annually. Business is $650 monthly, $500 if you pay annually. So that's kind of the spread, and it's significantly higher than like a website builder platform, like a template builder, because we've integrated all these design and development kind of features to it, where I think of Morphic, bigger picture, as more of an automated creative agency that can provide custom solutions and designs that it doesn't.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. So for us, the comparison price wise is actually more the agency. So it's more like, 25K minimums up to 75K for a professional marketing kind of company profile site. So we're about probably on average 10 times more than the website builder, and we're probably 10 times less than the agency. So that's kind of where we sit.
Yeah, super important message there. I think that's the exact comparison, because you think of like how much you'd have to pay somebody to do the things that Squarespace doesn't do for you. Squarespace is great, but like you said, you need a designer, you need somebody with a sensibility around that.
Yeah.
You're saving searching for that, testing that, you've got a great solution there, and then you provide that design sensibility to your product. You don't have to pay that person. Not that I'm against paying designers, but for specific purposes, right? And you got to get this thing up. $500 a month is so reasonable. Holy cow!
I think that comes back to the idea that you shouldn't have to pay like you're reinventing the wheel to build your company marketing site. But traditionally, you're right. Like you did have to pay like you're reinventing the wheel. And that's still how the agency model works, because that's just how you have to go about the process. And to do a custom design, you have to go through that process and then have the engineers build it. So that's kind of what we've been able to to automate is those custom designs. And for our customers, like I said, like Squarespace is a great product for specific use cases. It's not for our customer base because they'll go in there and they'll type in, you know, venture capital group or AI startup or something, and it will recommend like a hairdresser's template. So then they automatically know like, this is not going to work for us. Like, I don't know what to do in here. So, but then on the other side, yeah, the agency is way too expensive. So that's what we're trying to kind of solve for.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Weston, I could talk with you for another hour. I got all kinds of questions and ways to go here, but we'll keep it just to what we've got so far. That was awesome. I loved your presentation. Cool. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, everybody, for attending. This recording will be available on founderslive.com /backstage marketplace index /Morphic and in other places, our YouTube, namely. So please connect with Weston. The link is in the chat. If you want to get more information, Weston's got some, there's some bullet points on there and things he can do for you, a little site assessment. Yeah, start thinking about your website and upgrade that brand presence. Really appreciate your time, Weston. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you during our partner showcase. Well, we'll talk to you more about that. Guys, we're going to be having a partner showcase throughout the rest of June, July, August, into September, into prime time. And we're going to be showcasing our partners and bringing that message about all they do to our entire audience and helping founders everywhere. So with that, we're going to wrap up the show. And have a great day. Have a great week. Check out founderslive.com for all the other things you might need from us, our events. We've got Backstage Marketplace with partners. Weston, have a great week. We'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.